Hi all, welcome to the next episode of Talks 21. My today's guests are architects and scientists Kristine Mun, Satchin Panda, and Tom Albright. Welcome to the podcast of Talks 21 and thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Kristine Mun. Dr. Kristine Mun has been investigating and expanding the boundaries of architecture for over 3 decades, questioning its norms, integrating new methodologies, and reimagining its future. A Los Angeles-based architect, researcher, and educator, her work bridges architecture, neuroscience, and advanced computational design to fundamentally rethink how buildings shape human experience. She is the founder of Sensory Architecture, a research-driven practice dedicated to empathic and sensory-adaptive architecture. A registered architect in the Netherlands, she has exhibited her work internationally, including at the Venice Biennale, and has worked across scales from experimental research to large-scale build projects. Her practice employs advanced design technologies, from digital fabrication and immersive environments to AI-driven simulation. Dr. Mun serves on the board of executive committee of the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture, ANFA, where she advances the field's interdisciplinary foundations. Her current research focuses on the neuroscience of form, investigating how architectural elements measurably affect the brain and body, validating design intuition with biological data. Satchin Panda. Professor Satchin Panda studies how circadian or daily rhythm in our behavior and environment shape health and health span. His research revealed a consistent daily rhythm in eating and fasting, now widely known as intermittent fasting, and demonstrating its profound effects on brain and body health with the potential to prevent, manage, and in some cases reverse chronic disease. He also discovered critical roles of a blue light sensing protein in the retina that conveys information about light quality, brightness, and duration to multiple brain regions involved in mood, sleep, circadian timing, and even migraine pain. Currently, his work focuses on the systemic effects of sleep and exercise on the brain and body. Together, his research provides a cellular and molecular understanding of how the quality, quantity, and timing of food, sleep, exercise, and light exposure influence human health from birth through old age. His interest in architecture arises from the insight that the built environment strongly shapes our lifestyle choices, presenting an untapped opportunity to design spaces that enable healthier, more fulfilling lives. Tom Albright. Dr. Thomas Albright is a neuroscientist known for his work on how the brain processes visual perception, attention, and memory. His research bridges basic neuroscience and the real-world applications, informing therapies for visual impairment, advances in forensic science, and the design of environments that support learning, focus, and well-being.
Neuroscience and architecture. What a great example of multidisciplinary synthesis. I believe that in today's world this is so important to broaden our science, to look not only at specific narrow topics, but to broaden our view. And you, my guess, you are a forefront, you are examples of making this happen. Maybe if you can share with us, why neuroscience in architecture? What do the buildings do to our brain and to our bodies?
Well, it's long been known that the environment in which you inhabit has a profound influence on the way you feel, the way you think, the way you work. And about 25 years ago, there was an organization based in San Diego that established what we call the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture. And the premise was that the field of neuroscience, which is a juggernaut of modern biomedical research, has reached a point where we know enough about the brain that we can use that information to guide the design of the built environment, to create environments that are better. And in general, the purpose of science is to improve, to solve problems in the real world. And so I think of architecture, or at least some aspects of architecture, as an applied science. We take scientific information, we make predictions about how people will behave in the built environment, how they'll perform intellectually, how they'll learn, how they'll heal, and then we can test those hypotheses, those predictions, in real experiments.
Yes, we are in the very special premises of Salk Institute. I believe this is one of the amazing examples. Before our start, I was looking, there are laboratories connected, open space laboratories, very interesting design, very interesting combination. Is it one of the examples where architecture supports our brains?
Absolutely. So I've been on the faculty here for almost 40 years, and the successes of my career I attribute in large part to the people I've worked with, but also to this building. This building has provided an environment that sort of facilitates a way of thinking. Now, if you ask me to explain how that happens, I can't give you, it's very difficult to articulate. They're practical issues, one being the fact that on each one of these floors there's 16,000 square feet of undifferentiated space. There are no structural walls in the interior, which means that the labs run into one another, which fosters social interactions builds community between different laboratories. And those boundaries between laboratories is where the sparks fly. That's where new science emerges. You meet somebody at the water cooler or at the tea room, and you start talking and realize that you have a common interest. You're approaching something from different directions. And that's where new science is born. So that's a practical aspect of this. But there's also something very special about the building, about the way light moves through the space that has, in a way that is very hard to articulate, has a big influence on the way people feel and think in this environment. And so our hope is that through neuroscience, we can figure out how that happens.
So can we say, and it is quite known already, that open spaces are a good way to go, that it helps people to open one to each other and cooperate more, perhaps?
I would say in general, open spaces facilitate social interactions, and a good part of science is those social interactions. Historically, we sort of think of scientists as monastic, but as time goes by and techniques expand, it's really important to be able to talk to other people who have different perspectives on the problem. And much of that comes about through social interactions that benefit from this kind of environment.
But I guess open space also has a little bit of challenge, like, for example, when it comes to thinking or writing a manuscript, focusing on something, then you need little private space.
Yes.
So in that way, the institute or this building has also done marvelously, because we can create individual office spaces within this lab area where people can occasionally go and sit down and think, write, or design their experiment. And also we have these professorial studies where the professors can walk out of their laboratory, make a journey to their studies, and that's where they think, or they have small meetings. So it's a combination of both the open space and also the private studies or individual studies.
Yeah. I think that's certainly true. All the faculty here have both an office within the lab space, and that's critical. My office door is open all the time, so people can come in and talk to me about their experiments. But as Satchin said, I can retreat to my study, which is where I go if I'm working on a grant and I need a space to sort of think without interruption.
So this building is designed by Louis Kahn and for Jonas Salk, and Jonas Salk has created the cure for polio, and he won a wonderful grant to be able to build this institute, the Salk Institute. And he spent some time in the monastery, some time in Europe, and he wanted to know, how can I create a space for the people who are at the Institute where they can feel calm and still do the incredible thinking that they do in this place, the research that they're working on. And he wanted to create an environment that sort of replicated that kind of sense of feeling of that. And Louis Kahn, who is a master of light, a master architect of modern architecture, and a master of light in architecture, he designed the space so that this center water stream faces the ocean, and it aligns exactly at the summer and winter equinox. The sun path exactly aligns with this line of water. What that means is that he has been designing with light in mind.
Yes.
He has designed with the idea of who's occupying the space. And I think what Satchin and Tam is saying is that there are spaces where you can come here and move around, calmly move around. Sound mostly is blocked off from everything that's happening out there with these big masses. And there's a chance to be in a state of openness and closeness and has that diversity and flexibility. In other words, as they are saying, different spaces is required for different type of brain thinking. And so form and space and mindset and mind action and the work that we do matters. They are intertwined together. And I think that's where the neuroscience and architecture sort of comes in and how we can, and great architects knew that, as we know here. But now neuroscience helps us identify what's happening in the body with real data that they could measure and experiment with and study the body over time.
So we can go from intuition to rigorous proofs.
Exactly, and that's where the science is so critical.
And is it perhaps something similar with monastery and structure like that is supposed by parasympathetic part of our nervous system?
That's right. There's the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. There's a theory called prospect and refuge theory by J. Appleton, and it was about the how landscape and the experience of landscape and how the body in their environment has a need to see but not seen.
Yeah.
It needs to feel that they can look out to the expansive view ahead, but protected by the walls or surrounding nearby, like a canopy or walls. And this space allows you to have that open space and refuge at the same time. And this is why it's quite a wonderfully balanced space, because our body, the nervous system, is requesting that balance. And this place remarkably offers that.
Okay. So this place is great for science, research, for calming down. What about for home? Is there a general characteristic we can say how a home should look like, a family home from neurological point of view?
Yeah, so that's a great point, because we spend on an average 87 to 95% of our time in built environment, and those who are not working 8 to 5, they're spending all their time in homes. So starting from when a child is born until the child goes to school, in those early development period, the child is entirely at home. So then the home is not a simple container, but it's actually a cradle for brain development and human physiology. Because when we think of neuroscience, the first thing that comes to our mind is emotion and cognition. But actually what we are learning more and more, our endocrine system, or for example, our hormones, and as we mentioned, sympathetic and parasympathetic signals all emanate from the brain. So brain health is not only about cognition and emotion, it's about the entire body's health. So along that line, I think we have to think about how the built environment is affecting sleep-wake cycle, stress, and reaction to stress. And also, is that an indoor environment good for our lungs and the brain? Because, for example, there might be pollution outside, but how can we prevent that pollution, air pollution, to come inside the home? And historically, we have been thinking about the effect of pollution on lungs, but we are also increasingly understanding that there are what we call endocrine disruptors. So there are pollutants that can affect our hormones. And now we have to rethink whether, for example, a carbon dioxide level inside the home, what was considered safe for our lung, may not be optimum for our brain. So along that line, I think neuroscience, architecture, physiology, all of these have to work together to figure out what is an optimum environment for home. One example where it has made an impact is in 70s, scientists figured out that lead and asbestos are pretty bad for our health.
What is bad for our health?
Lead and asbestos.
Lead and asbestos, yes, sure.
And that's a great example how it changed all built environment, not only offices, but homes and almost every structure. So I think similarly, we may see new science coming out. For example, from my lab, we figured out we are working on what is the impact of light on our health. And light can be a mood booster if given at the right time and the right dose. Daylight elevates our mood, but at the night time, it can be endocrine disruptor because it can
especially the
suppress
white light, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is the worst.
Yeah. So I think some of the best examples come from light, air pollution, but I think those are just the tips of the iceberg.
Yeah, and then noise pollution as well.
Noise pollution. So I think there is more to be done.
And while all that's true, only a small fraction of residences in this country today are custom designed by architects.
Yeah.
Architects have essentially priced themselves out of the business of designing
I see.
family residences. And so Satchin's absolutely right. There's certain needs that we have as human beings, and we're different from one another. And so giving everybody the same kind of house is not necessarily going to be the solution for everybody. Some people will survive in a cookie cutter house, some people won't. And then you consider your definition of survival. What does it take for you to be at top performance?
Creative, yes.
And-
you don't want to just survive.
And I can say, well, this environment is what it takes for me to be in top performance. But if I go home and I don't have this environment, if I don't have it designed in a way that optimizes me as a functioning human being, then we're missing something. So the question is, how do we get there, given the prohibitive cost of hiring an architect?
So what you are saying, there can be like a very specific custom-made optimization, which of course would be extremely costly, but at least we can get some like basic rules which would improve in generic terms.
I think that's right, yeah. And we're not there yet.
Yeah, and so what are, for example, blind spots that we can, like, in the past it was asbestos, for example. Are there blind spots like that in today's world? Well, I'm sure they are, but what would be like the points that you could...
Well, I think Tom's right. Just to add to Tom's point, we live in a world where most of the houses look the same next to one another. Not even in this country, but the homes across the world look similar to the homes that I find here. And what that means is that we're building homes to model and fit within a certain standard and an industry standard. And so we're designing homes that are not so much about the body anymore, but by a system of how you build houses or just the construction.
To make simpler construction rather than correct construction.
Or even rethink the construction, or rather, let's say, the body has been left out. The human psyche, the human behavior, it has been left out, and so we are trying to bring that back in. And the question is, what is it that the body needs? What does the brain need to feel supported in their environment? And as Tom said, anywhere you go, in fact, everywhere you go, it is a different environment to you, the organism. So it's a relationship between the organism and their environment, and it's always constantly changing. So we have to try to design an architecture that will absorb change, that will adapt, that will be resilient, and that will be open to interpretation, so to speak. And that takes a rethinking of how we even think about what is a house. What is a house? Is it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a kitchen and a living room? Or is it a space to sleep, space to think, space to move around, space to enjoy my family, space to be alone and read? If we think about these actions, and so many of them that we take across the time of the day and in our lives, there are too many to put into a space. And so what we typically do is just keep it one big open box. And this is, in a way, what Louis Kahn did, is incredibly created this open space so that the furniture rearrangement can create these new pockets of engagements. It's a super 100% flexible space. Now, can we take some of that idea and put it into architecture, not by moving things, but by reshifting how we think about what kind of spaces we need, and that instead of giving it a name like a bedroom, we call it a dark space, a big space, a tiny space, a quiet space. Put in different kind of sensory experiences that we engage with all the time when we go into these spaces. Name it that, and then see what kind of architecture we might come up with. It's worth trying, I would say, to rethink about how we design the houses that we live in. And maybe we will find out that you don't need to build so much. In fact, the more you take away and the more you get engaged with outside inside, the more better it will be for our health.
So simpler is probably
Take away, reconnect. You know, the thing we do in our homes, unfortunately, 55% of our home lot for most people are not used because we don't exist in the front yard or the backyard. We go into our home and we stay there. And then we go out to our office and we go inside. And this is the way we live today. And if we redesign from landscape in, as Jay Appleton says, just work with the landscape outside in and see how you bring the outside into the space, you will find a reconnectability. And the mid-century architects did that very well. And we know this, Neutra, we know they did that very well, but here we are now, and we can take that further by measurement, by real science, and create evidence to some of the claims that we're making as designers.
So you can say that the top architects know it by intuition, and we can make it like a general knowledge for everybody.
I think that's right. I mean, we know historically there are great architects. There are people who have achieved this. And so the premise is that, well, neuroscience can give us the knowledge that we can then feed to architects to do this on a routine basis. But there's strong pressures, economic pressures against this. I agree with Chris. This is something worth trying, because as things are now, we force the human to fit into the house rather than fitting the house to the human. And we have to get past that. But without evidence, the construction companies, the ones that do these mass tract house constructions, are not going to change. It's not economically viable for them to change. And so how do you get them to think differently? You give them evidence. And this is where science comes into the picture.
Yeah. So, and if there is evidence, there may be sufficient demand, and they may be kind of forced because the people will want it, right?
And I think this is happening in residential construction is particularly a problem, but in other domains like the design of schools, for example, there's evidence that certain types of school design facilitates learning. And so to the extent that school designers, again, money comes into play, but school designers present to the school boards, the people who control the purse strings, present these ideas about how you can facilitate learning given a certain type of design, then that may tip the balance so that we start building schools in a different way.
But I guess also I must say that all intuitions may not be right. And all intuitions may not be practical. For example, in most urban areas, slowly more than 50% of people will have no access to ground floor. They will be living in tall buildings. And so there we don't have any choice of outdoor, because people will come in, take a lift, go to their floor. So then the question is, how do we bring this sense of connection to the nature? And this is where, for example, in Singapore, there are quite a few buildings where now they're building vertical gardens.
Okay.
So
okay,
where
okay.
people can still see some nature from their 10th
Right.
floor.
Hanging. So
Hanging, yeah.
Okay. Why
So
not?
that's part of the biophilic design, and this is now well established again by scientists that yes, people recover much better from a surgery or they're recovering from illness if they have connection to nature. And we cannot have everybody on the ground floor, so this is where new evidence that biophilic design, where you are connected to nature, improves healing
Health.
and back to full function. Those kind of data will be needed to change design. And then, we always get example. We always take good examples of good architecture, but then there are some not so great buildings, and not so
This
great
is also
buildings.
a good example what not to do, right?
Yeah, but then that's where we have to say that not all intuitions are good,
Yes,
because
of
that
course.
building was never built with a bad intention.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I believe that what is our strongest power of being able as humans to connect intuition, emotion with rational thinking.
Yeah.
Make the connection. Not just rational thinking, which is too narrow. I call it narrow rationality. It's too limiting, and intuition might be great, but it might be also very misleading. So it is important to go to this back and forth check and strategy. Yeah. This is so interesting. What you are saying, and there is evidence for that, I suppose, that depending on the architecture and the structure, people heal faster or slower. I can imagine that this is so specific. So even if one is healthy, then the effect of brain and creativity can be totally different. Yeah? So this is a big thing. It can be like even a revolutionary thing for people, because we can say now that most people in the world live in spaces which are not good, right? They are closed and their thinking, spirituality, and is being diminished.
There's an old study, a famous study that is often cited, which demonstrates that the single factor in a hospital room that predicts the likelihood of recovery is the presence of a window in the room.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to pick up on this idea of biophilic design, because you can actually simulate this. You don't actually need the presence of the outdoor world there. And I did an experiment with a group in Baltimore, an architectural design firm, and they got access to was a public school called Green Street Academy, and there was a classroom that was going to be redesigned, and the hope was the design would facilitate learning. And the design was based on this idea that you can simulate, biophilic design, you could simulate the external world. This design was also motivated by an understanding of how the visual system works. I study the visual system in my laboratory, and we know a lot about how cells in the visual system represent attributes of the world, how they're connected up. And based on that, we came up with a set of patterns that we lined the room with. In this experimental classroom, the control classroom was a standard classroom. We didn't do anything to it. And we had two dependent measures. One is academic performance, which is easy because these kids are given standardized tests on a regular basis. We did it both in the experimental and in the control room. And the other measure is stress. And we wanted to measure cortisol in the saliva, but these are children, and there were restrictions on how we treat children in experiments, so we couldn't do that. But we used heart rate variability, which is a proxy for stress. And so we measured those two things, and in the experimental classroom, academic performance increased and stress levels decreased. And the only thing we did was replace the patterns on the walls in this room, such that they simulated biophilia in the natural world, and they were designed in a way that would tap into this native organization of the visual system.
Amazing. There is one thing I would like to ask you. It's why you remind me with the window. What I personally, I just dislike so much when I'm somewhere and I cannot open windows. Yeah, for me, this is almost not a drama, but I really dislike that. So, and this is more and more happening, especially in the US. In these big cities, there are like these terrible glasses, and to me, it's very natural. I don't know if it's something to do with the psyche, or if there is some, or it's just my subjectivity only.
No, I guess you bring up an important point. So, architecture is about the aesthetics and also the building. And aesthetics is all about the visual system. Mm-hmm. And just imagine how will be the living experience if we just close our eyes. Mm. So that's why the impact of visual system on our brain, as it comes from the built environment or the natural environment, is huge. And now, we can break it down to one is this biophilic design or natural simulation of nature. And then the second one is the quality and quantity or timing of light, which I work on, where this is something, the light that we don't see, but we sense. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where I think the most research on the impact of architecture on human health comes from the visual system or the amount, quantity, quality, and timing of light. And just like Tom described, that he just simulated the existing structure with different elements to create the sense of being outside. Mm-hmm. So similarly, I think in future architecture, there are now multiple options available. So for example, you might live in a static building, but if the windows are designed well, then you can have sun moving and you can get a sense of light, sense of time. But at the same time, when the digital OLED TV and then all these digital devices, their prices are dropping, you can actually have a digital wall where you can project anything that you'd like. Mm-hmm. And the next thing that's also happening is human-centric lighting or circadian lighting, where the lighting can simulate the outside world. And some of the best examples I have seen was actually in Prague, and in the
institute?
National Institute of Mental Health, mm-hmm. where there are now many mental health patients who are hospitalized there. Mm-hmm. For safety reasons, they may not go outdoor. But now they are simulating the outdoor light environment and outdoor lighting indoor, but only during the daytime. At nighttime, they're also making sure that these patients have access to darkness. Yes. Because that's one thing that we are missing now, that we don't have access to darkness. Uh-huh. And now in an IMH in Prague, they're finding that bringing this just sense of light during the day at the right time, at the right dose, and access to darkness at night actually helps a lot to these people who are very vulnerable and they need to come back to normal functioning. And then the second example in Prague is actually in cardiac rehab. Actually, it's in the hospital where they have the most severe heart patients who are hospitalized for weeks. And now they're simulating day-night cycle where the lighting inside these rooms are synchronized to outside. So in the evening, they dim down and they become orange in color. But then they also worked with the physician so that if there is any emergency, they can increase the light intensity without increasing blue light. And initially, they thought they would have a lot of pushbacks. But then by talking to these light architects, what I heard was actually the nurses and doctors, they also feel much better. So I think these are some of the very focused examples of experiments that will give us better results, hopefully. And based on that scientific outcomes, whether these patients are recovering faster or not, those practices may be widespread in next 5 to 10 years.
This is great information that we are in the front of.
I think these simulations are really important because as we build more complicated environments, it's important that we be able to simulate the natural world in places where we're not able to. But an important cognitive issue comes up, which is to what degree do the simulations work if we realize that they're actually phony, that they're not the real thing? If I'm told that this is a natural scene and I believe it, does it have a differential effect on me if I suddenly discover, well, it's completely phony. This is not the natural world. I was, just to give you an example, I was in a very fancy hotel in Puerto Vallarta a few years ago, and I was in a public restroom, and there was this wonderful blue tiled wall and a wall of light cast down on it from a ceiling window, a wash of light. And I thought, that's really beautiful. And then I went over and realized there was a light bulb up there, and it just destroyed the whole effect for me.
Okay,
So
I see.
when we realize these things aren't real, is it going to change the impact that they have on our cognitive function?
Well,
And
So
can I respond to that? I think when you saw it blue, you thought it was great until you found out
that's right.
that, so you experienced still something great.
I did, as long as I was fooled.
It's sort of like the coyote that runs off the cliff and he thinks he can float, but until he learned that he ran off the cliff, did he fall down? You know, so the awareness sort of killed your experience, so to speak.
Yeah.
But before that, you experienced something
right.
nice.
And so
At the same time, we do not want to be fooled, right? We want to know the reality. We don't want to.
Well, I think-
I was just disappointed.
Exactly.
It changed the whole
Exactly.
experience. The beauty, I mean, there are multiple factors that
But
affect.
at the same time, if you knew it, if you had known it up front and you would be ready for, maybe you could appreciate it partly. You would know it's.
I still would have appreciated it, I'm sure, but it took something out of the experience to realize that it was completely phony.
Yeah.
It was still beautiful.
I think what's been explained is that even though I think I heard that architecture is about an aesthetics or sort of a visual practice. Architects are thinking beyond the visual aesthetics of a building. They're thinking about so many things, and one of them is, and in fact, the critical factor is about how does it function, of course, but how do you experience while it functions? So you have to have function, beauty, and the experience that one architect, in a way, curates and choreographs when they're designing a building. And a building and architecture are sort of different because we can build buildings, but to design the architecture is to think about so many things in mind. And what is being expressed is that although you're seeing the world with your eyes, you are actually perceiving the world with your body and sensing it with your body. The light isn't just a visual light, but it is a body, it is a light, it is data that is acting upon my body for me to feel in a certain way. And so I think there are so many reasons why we do what we do. And I think habits and habitation is guided by how we set up our living environment, how we arrange our furniture. I think furniture has taken a lot of the human cognitive behavioral agency away from architecture. That is like how you sit around the dining table, how you sit around the living room. These things guide more on our behavioral and habit and habitations in our homes more than the forms and shapes of the house. And so we need to work on the posturing of the body at many scales of integration of how we live through the day, and look at it from many senses. Yeah, it's a multi-sensory practice. Architecture is a multi-sensory practice. And you were talking about interdisciplinary practice at the beginning. The study of human behavior requires an interdisciplinary practice because it is so complex. And I think we are now at an age where we can work with scientists, cognitive scientists, environmental scientists, engineers, architects, because of the language of computers, specifically data transfers. We can flow information in many domains of expertise, and that allows us to communicate and share information in many domains. And this is the wonderful thing about today.
Technology may be very helpful in that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to stress the importance of a multicultural perspective as well. And Chris is right. In this country, We populate the rooms of our houses with great big pieces of furniture, which then dictate the way we interact with the space. But in Japan, you'll never go into a Japanese house and find a gigantic sofa in the living room. Things are arranged in a completely different way and for different purposes.
People sit on the floor, right?
People sit on the floor.
Yeah, which I love, by the way.
I do too, yes.
Yeah. I would have preferred to sit on the floor.
Okay, let's go now.
Exactly, we could all do that.
Oh, the complication for the camera too much, maybe. Next
Maybe
time.
a problem, yeah.
I guess I look at architecture like a cup of coffee. So, everybody drinks cup of coffee to get the caffeine shot. But then we all have our personalized preference for how the coffee is prepared. So that's where the cultural differences happen. For example, you go to India, it's really hard to get the drip coffee. You get instant coffee, and then here it's different. But the challenge for us, for the scientists and architects, is to figure out what is the dose of that caffeine. So similarly, there are fundamental principles that affect health. And if we figure out those elements of architecture that has more impact on health and more impact on health of everybody from a child all the way to a 100-year-old, maybe those can be incorporated into building designs so that it impacts everybody. And then we can have personalization.
Yeah, exactly. So what you are saying, we have some essential elements, fundamental elements, which are general for everybody, and then we have the individual and also cultural issues which can differ widely, but the essence should be there.
Yeah. And when it comes to that essence, then connection to the outside world and biophilic design, or the way I think of human-centric lighting that changes throughout the day. And then how much air exchange ratio, HVAC, all those factors. There are certain things that are fundamental, the foundation of architecture, and then we can build on top of that.
Yeah. Very nice. Maybe I would like to ask a little bit more about children. What you said is about the simplicity. I think it's so important because what I believe has been happening so much, and it is, we know it all. We are so much manipulated by everything as adults, and we are also manipulated by children. And the way I see the world, that there is so much beauty in simplicity in nature. Because nature is just like a fractal. It's just so beautiful, but one needs to be patient and explore and look at the details, not be overwhelmed by a shining quick light, which is what we are doing to our children, right?
Yes.
And I was thinking about, I had once like this, some memory maybe, that one can see something shiny as a kid. Oh, it's so great. And then you explore after you find it's fake. So this is such a disappointment. So that I can see might even destroy or hurt the development of children.
Yes. Well, Richard Louv spoke very well about this condition and saying that there's such a thing as nature deficit disorder. That children, because we're living in urban environments more and more people are living in urban environments and experiencing a lack of green. They are having nature deficit disorder, meaning that their attention span is lessened. They can't focus as well. They're more excited, or they can't regulate their emotions as well. And going back with a biophilic example and the importance of having nature around you, we need to bring children back into this environment. And I speak personally because I have a 5-year-old son, and I live in an urban environment.
Kids, so
you have 5 kids?
I also speak personally.
Amazing. I have one, and it's enough. But 5-year-old son who is active and in a regular school or preschool, you are told to sort of sit around and circle time, read books, but that energy of 3-year-old boy wants to run around. And this is the environment to the organism relationship that I'm talking about. So unfortunately, in cases like that, children are diagnosed with having a hypertension or ADHD or they're diagnosed incorrectly, or rather than switching the environments and finding an environment in which the child can excel in. And for a 3-year-old boy, running around in the forest was the most important thing. And I drive an hour away from my home to take him into a nature-filled school, a school in the forest. And it does wonders to your brain and the children. It's a free-flowing environment where you get to discover, you get to solve problems, you get to invent how you're going to move through the space, and the whole body-brain connection, moving through complex terrains is being absorbed as the child is growing up. And the other thing about beauty and the beauty of patterns, and I think Tom speaks about patterns and pattern recognitions quite well. In nature, you can have so many different layers of patterns, like or sounds, polyphonous sounds, overlays of sound and overlays of patterns, but they don't seem messy. They all work harmoniously.
Yes.
Because there's a self-similar variation.
It's not shouting, right?
It's not shouting, but they're all different. But if you were into your home and you had all these different patterns, your home would look like a mess. But nature does something that allows it to all connect in a harmonious way. And it has to do with variations and self-similarities and fractals, as you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, there's no question about the value of nature, of looking at nature. It's just a really difficult problem in our modern world because parents are afraid to let their kids. When I was a kid, I just went out. I left in the morning and I came back in the evening. My parents didn't have any idea where I was.
Yes, and it's one of those sicknesses of modern society.
We're afraid to send our kids.
Frightened,
that's right.
Rationally frightened. Yeah.
I live a couple hundred yards from a beautiful park, and when my son was growing up, I didn't let him go out to that park on his own.
We as small kids, we would go out in woods, whatever, and parents would see us in the evening,
Exactly.
right? Today, one cannot let the kid, 10-year-old kid, go alone to school.
Yeah, if you actually let, then the cop will come and catch you because you are irresponsible parent, right? No, I think the challenge, what we are discussing, is a huge challenge for humanity in general because. If you think about our human history, maybe for 120 or 200,000 years, after the controlled use of fire, we kind of wanted to have some canopy above us. So we had caves and then, small houses and huts and teepees where we just came there to nap. The house was never to work. All the work was outside. Either you're hunting or you're cultivating something. And only in the post-industrial era, like only in 150 years out of this 200,000 years, we are faced with this challenge, how to build a house where we can nurture our health and mind and live a long, healthy life. And so in that context, I guess what science and architecture, civil engineers, all of us, we have achieved in over the last 50 to 70 years is really remarkable, and we should celebrate that too. That 200,000 years of living outdoor, and we are trying to bring that in, are challenging. And as Tom is pointing out, there are certain elements that we are learning, those are important, that can be brought into the house, and certain elements we may never be able to bring in. For example, a child running through a park and being exposed to a lot of allergens, pollens and dust and other stuff, is building the immune system so that this kid is not becoming allergic to normal food in future. So that's one example, one element that we cannot bring easily inside the home unless you have a pet. The pet will bring all the dirt and everything. And to your other point about our kids being not exposed to the forces of nature, for example, these days, I don't know whether your kid has ever seen a match light. Like, has your kid actually seen a firelight?
Fire? Yes.
Yeah.
Camplights, campfires.
Yes. Candles and other stuff, right?
Yes.
But recently, I had experience with this 1-year-old kid who had never actually experienced light. Like means firelight.
Fire.
I'm not talking about candle, and that candles are very protected in this house. And this kid was visiting, and then I thought, I had some New Year sparkle, so I lighted up this sparkle. But then I realized, like Tom, you pointed out, these kids are seeing sparkles and firework only on TV and only on screen. So they don't understand that the sparkles are also fire and you should not touch it.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So it was an interesting example how, since this kid was not exposed to one of the forces of nature, he did not realize that, of course, so means I had to protect him. But that kind of sparked something in my mind, like, yes, there are certain things that babies are not exposed, and is it safe? And when it should be safe? How to introduce them to forces of nature.
Yes, and perhaps at least how to help in the design of the room, and maybe what we put inside for the kids. Are there any general rules? I would assume that it's not good for kids to be buying shiny stuff and all. It's more better to be this simple stuff. Or are there any rules maybe suggestions?
I think what we have to design for is designed for community. And what we're lacking more than ever today, after all these years of building to this point, is lacking community. And the reason why we used to let children run out into the park is that they're playing with their other friends in the park, and you had a neighborhood. But we are terrified these days. We don't live in the same way. We live in a different cultural, let's say, habits, so to speak, because we're very much tied to our devices and the digital world. And that did something to us, and we're more protective, we stay home, and we're not building a community, and we're even falling into a loneliness epidemic all around the world. And buildings that are high rises, stacked up floors with elevators that take you from floor to floor with no sense of social integration within a building that houses so many people. This is the problematic, let's say, conditions of today. I would say one of the biggest modern problems of today is the lack of community. Who do we turn to? Besides not in the digital space, but in real space, our neighbors. And this is what we need to design for.
Yeah, it's difficult, though, because these devices are so addictive, especially for children. Everything happens very quickly, and it generates a very short attention span. The attention span of a YouTube video is what most children have, because they live in that world. It facilitates a certain type of social interaction, but it's not an optimal one.
No, not even. It's terrible, actually. I know Martina Stranci, doctor, a neurologist, he's doing research on addiction of kids to social network and stuff. And his conclusion, he wrote a book about that, actually. What he showed there, that the effect on the brain is similar as addiction to heroin.
Yeah.
Right.
It affects the similar parts of the brain, which is terrible. So we are now in this totally disconnected world, no touch to nature for children, as you were saying, and this looks really terrible. It's complicated, pessimistic. On the other side, each coin has two sides, and one of the things which is in that sense could be positive for the technologies, which I experienced myself actually. What would be a positive side of deep fakes? Right, we can have fake anything, but the positive side, and I'm subject to it because I'm a public person, so there are so many deep fakes about me, recommending to whom to give money or how to invest, whatever. What, however, could be the good side, that people are not stupid and then realize that they cannot trust anything that's virtual. Right. So if they want to have some knowledge, be able to communicate, to stand behind something, they need to contact with people physically in 3D, not virtually, because it can all be fake. So I believe that there is so much that it can be a backslash, that people are kind of with all the technologies connected, people might be motivated to come more into nature, to connect more, to meet physically. Because the virtual world just killed, because it's the fake one. It's this disappointment. So I hope that there is a way that it goes back. But of course, we need to be aware of it and open the door as much as possible.
I think it's, there's a whole generation of people that are being damaged by this seriously, because it's just incredibly addictive.
It is terrible, yeah.
And with the pandemic, so my stepkids were basically home, taking school from home, and they didn't see anybody else in person. They didn't have any opportunity to see anybody else.
Yes.
And so they just became completely addicted to this. And like I said, there's a generation of people like this.
It is a terrible thing.
And to pull that away is almost impossible. I don't see how we can, I mean, I appreciate your point. That is, you don't know what's real until you see it in real life. But
not on video, which people would believe
not
in the
on
past,
video,
right?
yeah. But
You know,
it's difficult.
It is difficult, yeah. And well, what has like the pandemic? It is for me. It has been a big issue because what we did, we so much hurt our children a totally irrational way. And my country was specifically good in that. Our schools were closed, longest in Europe. And at the same time, the pandemic, it was not dangerous for kids. So it was so irrational what we did to our children overall, yeah. And it might have terrible consequences, and it is very pessimistic. At the same time, I believe that we as humans are extremely flexible. Yeah, even if we are hard, even if psychology is really bad, there is a healing process which might work. Yeah, so...
you need to go cold turkey, I think.
Well, I told my five-year-old son, because I saw the effects of his behavior when he was watching YouTube shorts, and because of that, I took it away.
Yeah.
And as they say, tough now, but better in the future.
Yeah.
So I dealt with the initial tantrum, but then he got over it, and then he now can explore in space. And I said, if you're bored, enjoy being bored, you know. But he can now experience environments on his own without the need for this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to work on.
But I guess you're bringing up an important point that going back to your other point about community building, how to create a safe environment where kids and older adults also, means retired adults, they can go and socialize, because we also have to remember the other extreme. After retirement, it's hard for a lot of people to get in touch with their peers. And recently I was in India, and I was surprised that my uncle and aunt, they live in a independent house, so they have their own house. But they actually like it much better when they go visit their kids, because they are living in this big, tall apartment complexes, which we all hate. But then, according to the new building guidelines, all these big high-rise have to have community space. And there has to be, like, they have 3 miles of walking trails, and then there is space for all these older adults to come and socialize in the evening, and then there are kids playing in their own space. And that's another good example that instead of, when we are building this high-rise building with 300, 400 units in one big building, with the right guideline, building code, you can create safe environment where young adults, children, and older adults, they can have community building.
It's very important to build a community.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think you have to think ahead to build that into the programming of the building and make the argument that it is bringing a health factor. So we sort of need to create a guideline, a new standard that is on top of the existing standard that we can check off on the human health factor. That how can we create this criteria so that it becomes known to people, it becomes obvious.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's what we are also doing this podcast, because we want to help the raising.
Getting back to what we were saying earlier about the importance of disconnecting from devices, I raised my son without working television in the house.
Yeah, I remember.
And it wasn't based on any principle. It's just we didn't have a working television, and I was too busy. So he never saw television. And he functions in the real world now really well, but he was socially disconnected from all of his schoolmates because he hadn't watched what they watched on television.
Okay.
So that's a
So was it an advantage?
Well,
in the end, or
Next, I guess.
I think it hurt him socially because he couldn't really talk about the same things that they were talking about. And in the end, I think he didn't really want to talk about those things. but if you're growing up, it's really important to be part of the group. And he couldn't be a part of the group because he hadn't watched the program on TV the night before. And so that's an issue. If you take the device away, you're creating a child who doesn't have access to the same thing that the other kids have.
But is it a same with social networks? Because there will be TV, something common that people watch, but on the social networking and stuff, people watch different things, right? Even the kids. So, or I don't know, maybe, but do they have some? I mean, there are fairy tales which can be on Netflix and stuff, which are popular, which children watch. But addiction to social networks, I don't think makes this might not be this kind of loss, because it's a different for each kid, right? So it's not anything common.
Yeah, well,
if we protect our kids from that happening, which we do. Yeah.
So I don't watch the same stuff that my kids now. I have a couple of teenagers in my house, and I don't watch the same social network stuff that they do. And at dinner, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm completely disconnected.
Yeah.
I think coming back to the question of virtual and real, being disappointed maybe in the virtual space, that is, I say it's all experience. How and what part of the body is being excited because you're not in the outdoor space, you're in a virtual space. What gets excited in the brain is something, but it is getting an experience. And if we need to build community, and if we're talking about technology, how to work with technology, because we are coming into the world where our world is changing rapidly, working with VR can help people with conditions of loneliness if they can feel connected to another person. If we say we're calling our mom, this is virtual, they are not there, but the sound of their son's or daughter's voice is in their head. And so that's a virtual experience, but the connection is there. And so the more we can touch upon what is making these connections happen, now that's interesting, because now we have a technological device, EEG, heart rate variability, all these kind of biometric wearables connected with VR, visuals, connected with the people we're talking with, and we can start to measure how close and what gets excited, and can it start to help us with conditions of loneliness. For me, that is one of the saddest things that I think people are experiencing, because we are such a populated world, but so many people are lonely for so many reasons, and it's the saddest thing to know.
Yeah, I agree so much. The community building is something so important more and more, because people are more and more separated. For me, we also touched it, it's about the courage. I believe it is essential importance today to help people to become more courageous. And also courage for children, right? Because we were talking about this, how parents are generally overly cautious and stuff. I motivate my kids, my 4-year-old son, to climb on trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so natural. Of course, there is a theoretical risk, but there is always a risk, and the other risks are so much larger. So I hope that people, also our audience, think about it, that we should not protect our children too much, that we really should motivate them to go into nature and to do things which may look dangerous. But it's, for example, funny for me, if there is a playground for kids and there is a mommy there with the kids and afraid that there's something happens to her kid, right? It is designed for play, so it's totally crazy.
Yeah. I want to bring up another little bit different concept. So, I work on circadian rhythm, and one aspect of circadian rhythm is we eat and fast at different time of the day. And typically we are designed to eat during the day, and we are designed to fast at night. And for a very long time, when we had real access to fire, since fire was dangerous, and the kitchen was completely enclosed, a different structure. And since we could not store food at room temperature, food was not accessible 24/7. And now with the modern architecture, the kitchen is the center of the house, and it's open structure. So that makes food accessible to 24/7. And if you think about it, in most houses, people get up in the morning, they immediately go get their coffee, then something to snack, and then throughout the day until their eyes are open, their mouth is open. And I think that's one aspect that's actually affecting our physiological health. There is a lot of obesity, a lot of obesity-related complications because architecturally we have made food easily accessible 24/7. And that's one example of architecture that might be intuitive, but it's not good for you.
So how would you change that so that food is more difficult to access?
Yeah, if you can come up with, means this is a challenge for architects. Can you come up with a way where, it might be a little bit difficult. You have to do certain chords to even turn on the light in the kitchen, or
or maybe exercise. You have to do 2 pull-ups.
This is why architecture is very connected to culture and society. Is that we need to shift our cultural. We have to shift so many things for that to take place. It's not so much about like locking your refrigerator, but it's about we need to have work hours that work with the time of light. We can't have 24/7 life anymore where we have 24-hour stores or accessibilities online and connections and work 24 hours to other countries. I mean, we have a different life now that, as you say, is moving away from the primitive way that we were made to live. And that's the question, is like, is it about gadgets that we lock our doors, or is it a bigger question?
Yeah. I mean, for example, just like you said, that we should not have bedroom, kitchen, and we can have rooms.
That's right.
Yeah, but then if we want to have rooms, why can't we have a kitchen as a separate room instead of an open space?
I completely agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
We need to rethink the house. The house has not been rethought for hundreds of years. And we need to now, as a scientist and neuroscientists and neuroarchitects, we need to come together and say, what does the body need? What does it mean to be a human being, to grow, to experience, to connect mentally, physiologically, against and with nature, because the buildings are supposed to protect us from, inclement weather. So we need to look at it from the body, inside out.
Yeah, and it is so. These things are relatively new. How old is the connection architecture and neuroscience? How many years? How much room is there to explore? I suppose from what we are saying, a lot, right? There are a lot of things that can be improved and changed.
There's an old tradition in Indian architecture called Vastu Veda, and it's the Veda about building design. And the principle of it was you should build, in the simple terms, that you should build a building that improved the mental health of the occupant. And this tradition has been around for 4,000 years.
Okay.
And
nothing new.
The idea is not new. What's new is the burgeoning field of neuroscience, the knowledge we have about how the brain works.
You can measure our brain.
Yeah, there's actually a tradition in psychology, environmental psychology, environmental design, that goes back to the early part of the 20th century, the psychology of architecture. But neuroscience, since the last, say, 5 decades, we've had the knowledge to be able to exploit that to improve building design. And that's what the founding of this organization, the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture, was sort of built on the shoulders of that, so that we could get more and more people interested and aware. I speak to a lot of people and they say, what does neuroscience have to do with architecture? But the awareness of the fact that we're experiencing the world and we experience the world through our brains, they say, oh, I see. If you understand how that works, you can change the world to improve the experience.
Yes, absolutely. And now, we have entered a new area, right, with AI, with other technologies. And we have spoken about that architecture should be individual, which doesn't seem to be feasible from the cost point of view. But on the other side, with modern technology, with automation, with robots, maybe it will be possible at some point to do this automatically, to put the research into the general logic and use AI to design?
It's just a matter of time. I've been teaching architecture and about this topic for over 2.5 to 25 years. And it's just a matter of time when buildings are going to be designed and built with small-scaled robots that talk to each other and built collectively together. And it's only going to be a matter of time when buildings are going to be more and more connected with sensors that are connected with the biometric wearables that we are wearing. And so while there's dangers and fears, there's also hopes for what it can do. For example, the building that is a smart building, it doesn't have to look like lots of bells and whistles of technology that's moving. It could look like an Aldo building, a home, but it is so smart that it can save your life if you fell down and had a stroke.
Yes.
And if a building can save your life because of that, because it could register how much you fell, how fast, and your biometrics, that's worth making, taking this neuroarchitecture, and as well with computational and future directive smart architecture and IoTs, Internet of Things, that are all just going to be trillions of devices that are communicating with one another, not with us and in the bodies, but also in cities and unfortunately everywhere. So
unfortunately,
and fortunately, everywhere.
So this is the other side, right? That we are on one side it was drastically bad how people are addicted to social and kids social networks. On the other side, we have these opportunities. So this is what will come next. What will happen? Will we be able to make the shift and to create automatic buildings which will support our thinking, which will help us? Or, of course, there is the risk that we fail totally. And I believe that the responsibility is for us people who know what we are doing to take part of the responsibility and communicate, connect to each other, and try to do our best.
But I guess with the AI, we're getting into a mindset that AI will solve everything, which I disagree, because the current AI models are built on data that's existing. And as we discussed, our existing structure is not optimal. So essentially, it's going to perpetuate the suboptimal principles of current design.
Yeah, but we might put in the information, all information, including the research, so then the AI may improve it, right?
So that's where the data silo comes in, because you might say that, yes, we can measure the heart rate variability, sleep, and all that stuff, but that data is going to a different silo than the architects who are using the data to build the next building. So this is where we have to address how the data silos will be broken so that we can map where the person is, what are the history of that person, why that day's heart rate variability changed, or blood pressure changed, or emotional state changed. So we also have to address those data silos. Unless we address those, then we'll just self-perpetuating suboptimal design.
Yeah, so we are here to set up the paths to use the optimal one. And it certainly is possible. And
I think we're going to get there. You know, it's been, the 20th century has been a year of mass production, Fordism, building cars in a production change, and now it's getting into mass customization with 3D printing and manufacturing technologies that allows you to do anything you want. You know, if you can deposit any materials, 3D print food, 3D print anything, it's getting to be that kind of world where all the ways we have built up 20th century in this production chains and the supply chains and how we make things is just going to shift. Yeah. And when we have to, what an architect does, they don't just build buildings. They think about the world, they connect everything together, and we constantly grow with the evolution of times. And so we have to, as architects, frame this problem. What's going to happen when we are more and more connected to these devices, and it's going to infiltrate our lives? You you can say no completely to devices, but you're going to be in a very different environment that says no to all.
It's not sustainable.
Like the forest, and there's just so many areas of forest left when most people are living in cities, and it's sort of gearing towards that. So how do you handle all these people, and how do you design for that? This is a critical question.
It is, and what I also consider a very critical issue, that we are in the area of mass manipulation of people, and there is obviously a lot of monetary interests which are not in line with the best for us. So what I believe that we need to strive for and ask for is maximum transparency. And if we have data, or if we do analysis of data, if we do scientific arguments, it must be transparent. We must. So this is the methodology. These are the data. Anybody can copy that. It's actually one of the activities that I'm doing in the Czech Republic. How to do modern science. Modern science is a competition, inviting for certain analysis these data, inviting teams, statistical teams from who want to participate, and then competing like that. Because the hidden structure, manipulative structure, which we could see during COVID, it is so dangerous, and then we might not get there. Yeah, that's my point. If the manipulation is too strong, that the monetary interests might be elsewhere, and we might diverge to some bad solution as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of open science, but there's an issue of personal data as well, and ethical issues that are associated with that. So if I have devices monitoring lots of different properties of my body, there are concerns that if you release those to the general public and people know who you are...
No, of course, the data must be generalized. First of all, it can be encoded so that it's not privately analyzed. Yeah, it must be generic data.
But if you want to tune things to me, then there are questions about whether you could... what sort of prejudices will come into play if you're aware of the way my body works? So,
I think I'll give you another example. We're talking about wearables. How many newborn to 5-year-old actually have wearables on which we actually have data? Almost negligible. And how do we expect the AI to build a nursery or a children's hospital based on wearables when we have no wearable data? So I guess we have to also think about whether the data is biased in a way that we may be self-perpetuating the bad design again and again. So we should debate and discuss these things. What are the data gaps? Who might benefit? Who may be at a disadvantage if we go into this AI-based design?
Well, the ultimate answer is the individual.
Yeah.
If you can get the data of the individual and the individual is feeling great, something's working.
No, I mean, what I mean is like from newborn to 5 to 10-year-old.
Yes.
We have absolutely negligible amount of data because we don't get wearable data directly from
you don't have the wearable data, but you also don't have data about the environments that they're in.
Yeah. So that's why I think we should not rely too much that AI will take care of everything by getting the data when there is a hole in the data.
Yeah,
that is certainly true.
Yeah.
I mean, AI is one of the tools, and it can be just amazing tool. You on one click, you have all references. You are transferring 2 days. It's just magnificent what we can reach. But of course, it's not. It cannot be perfect by design, logically. Our brains, and this is we had a discussion. I believe that our creativity, ability to think cannot be matched by AI, at least at this point when it's digital. I'm not talking with, if it's quantum computers or biology computers, maybe we will become totally obsolete, I don't know, but at this point we are still in the forefront.
I'm actually a fan of material intelligence. I think nature has shown us that materials are not innate. They have intelligence and they have a special order of their own, and I like to look at nature's order.
I think we still need architect's intelligence, AI.
Yeah.
And also what I do believe is that we need to widen science from what I call narrow rationality point of view, just pure rationality, assuming total randomness or spontaneity of creation, to start admitting some spiritual framework of our lives, which also might need to reflect into science, while keeping rigorosity, being open to wider, I call it extended rationality, but that would be another topic. Okay.
Architecture is about structuring experience, and we've been talking about experience a lot. But what is experience, and how do we perceive our environment? One thing we know is that we perceive by moving through space. Perception comes through us by action. And one thing we haven't interrogated enough in architecture is the ground plane. And a few people in architecture in histories have interrogated the ground plane that if we, most of our ground planes are horizontal because it's comfortable, it's balanced. But if you just tilt it a little bit, you will encourage movement just by the tilting of the ground plane that motivates you to move. And so if we create an
architecture... So it's like a natural way to motivate people.
Natural way to motivate. So if architecture is meant to heal people and make them healthy, we don't want them to sit. We want them to move. We want them to explore and move around through space, and you can do that by tilting the ground plane. Another thing that I want to say is Zaha Hadid, who does this extraordinary building that's all curvature. Her work and Zaha has done incredible research and very specific condition of the transition from the outside coming in, the public to the ground plane of a high-rise, let's say. And that connection outside in is so important, or the public to private. That transition is so important, and she merges it so well that you don't feel like there's this straight line. Mm-hmm. Her buildings, when you go around, most high-rises, when you look at it, have the ground floor plane that's just the same footprint that's repeated all the way to the top. When you look at Zaha Hadid building, first of all, you cannot understand her building by looking at the computer. You must experience her building walking through, because the tilted planes, the tilted floor, the movement, it is moving through the building, which is the only way you're going to understand her building. But not only that, because it has this kind of everywhere around the ground plane is different, it's not the same, your eyes and your mind is just curious about continuing to go and go and go. Because you don't know, you don't predict ahead of time, i.e. a grid, a box, the next block, you're still just called. It's called affordance. Like there's something of the environment that's calling your body to move in a certain way. You're sort of called to continue to explore the building. And this is why the ground plane or the walls or the shape of the building is so important to how we move through them. It's not that the bedroom tells us to go to the bedroom, but it's because we feel like we're tired that we want to go to a quiet room. And again, talking about the bedrooms, because there's a bedroom and we call it a bedroom, most of the day that bedroom stays empty because we called it a bedroom, because we called it a kid's room. If you didn't call any spaces any rooms and there was no territorial definition, the entire architectural building would be used. But because we name them and we territorize them, you don't use that. And so it's a very inefficient model to name things. It's actually more efficient to not name things, but create an open-ended model. That's what architecture should do. Is how you experience is through moving through space, and how we move through space is the role of the architect. That's the curatorial role.
Do I understand correctly? There is not a structure like we are outside, inside, we are more and more inside, or something like that, and more and more towards the place where it's calm? Or?
We've come to this time and age where we have given over to comfort as the goal for architecture, that you must have a horizontal floor, that you must sit down, take your elevator up. You must aim for comfort as luxury or whatever.
Not a good objective.
But comfort isn't the same thing as health, and we must change our perspective about what we're aiming for as architects.
Okay. Let me thank you so much for this great discussion, and maybe in the end, if you want to say to our audience, where is your work, where they can look up your work and maybe communicate with you and use your great knowledge?
You can come to our ANFA website. You will see all three of us on the ANFA website. It's the ANFARCH.org, ANFARCH.com or .org. That's the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture that we are part of.
Yeah, we are all there. And also, my lab has a website, mycircadianclock.org, and that's where people can learn more about circadian rhythm and how it relates to their health. We also have an app where people share their data so that we can, so that data is never sold or never shared with any commercial entities. So we do collect this data for research purpose to understand how our daily life or daily habits affect our health, and whether we give some tool for people to self-optimize their health, and that also comes back to us so we can figure out individual variability. And it's again, mycircadianclock.org.
And as Chris said, we're all part of ANFA, so you can find information about us there. And I'm all over the internet. I've been studying the visual system for decades, and so you can find lots of information about how that science is used. One of my interests is taking that science and applying it to problems in the real world. And so I've done this in the context of architecture and design, and also in the context of criminal justice. Because there are lots of issues involving what people see and what they didn't see that apply to issues in prosecution and conviction of criminals. So,
Thank you so much for your work and for your time. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.